In the glow of my father's 50th birthday celebration, a single photograph shattered my world, a family united. Without me, their smiles, a cruel mask over a secret they thought I'd never uncover. Banished from the one place I longed to belong, I stumbled upon a truth in a small-town cafe that turned my pain into power. How did my exclusion unravel their carefully woven lies? And what did I do to reclaim my place in a story they tried to erase? I stepped off the bus into the familiar embrace of my hometown. Yet an unfamiliar ache stirred within me, as if the streets themselves whispered secrets I was not privy to. At 25, I had returned to this small American town, my heart alight with the hope of mending frayed family ties, only to sense an invisible barrier already forming. The neon glow of the diner across Main Street flickered, and the distant hum of pickup trucks rolling past felt like a pulse I no longer matched. Why did coming home feel like trespassing? My suitcase wheels scraped against the pavement as I headed toward a rented room, my mind tangled with memories of my mother's sharp words, my sister's distant gaze, and my father's quiet, elusive warmth. The bus station faded behind me, its faded timetable flapping in the evening breeze, a relic of a town that clung to its routines. I had been away for years, carving a life after college in a city that never slept. But the pull of family, or what I hoped family could be, drew me back. My mother, Linda, had always been the architect of our family's image. Her expectations a blueprint I could never quite follow. My sister, Emily, older and effortlessly poised, had molded herself into Linda's vision, while I remained the outlier, my edges too rough for their polished frame. My father, turning 50 this week, was the one I longed to reach. His gentle silences a refuge I craved amidst the storm of my mother's disapproval. As I walked, the town unfolded hardware stores with hand-painted signs, a barber shop with a spinning pole, each detail anchoring me to a past I both cherished and feared. Settling into my rented room, a modest space above a bakery, I opened my phone. Seeking connection through the glow of social media, my thumb paused over a post that stole my breath, a vibrant announcement of my father's 50th birthday celebration. A grand event planned by Linda at the town's elegant banquet hall. The date was tomorrow, the details vivid with promises of toasts and laughter. Yet my name was absent from the narrative. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. As the reality settled, I had not been invited. The sting was sharp, a blade of rejection slicing through my hope. Had they forgotten I was here, or was my exclusion deliberate? A silent verdict on my place in their world. I recalled a family picnic years ago, my teenage self lingering at the edges while Linda praised Emily's grace. My father's eyes meeting mine with a fleeting apology before turning away. That memory, once a dull ache, now burned with fresh clarity. I composed a text to Emily, my fingers trembling as I typed heard about Dad's party. Am I missing something? Her reply arrived swiftly. A single line that felt like a closed door. It's a small thing. Mia, don't make it a big deal. Her words, devoid of warmth, echoed Linda's dismissiveness, and I sensed their alliance, a bond I could not penetrate. Desperate for clarity, I dialed my father's number, my heart lifting at the thought of his voice. But Linda answered, her tone crisp and unyielding. Mia, we're keeping it intimate, she said. Then her excuse as flimsy as the limited seating she cited. You understand, don't you? I murmured agreement, my voice hollow. As the call ended, the room seemed to shrink, the bakery's faint sweetness below cloying now, a contrast to the bitterness rising within me. Alone, I sat on the narrow bed, the town's evening sounds filtering through the window, children laughing, a doll barking. The rhythm of a life I was no longer part of. My family's rejection was a wound laid bare, its edges raw and unyielding. Why had I believed coming home would bridge the chasm between us? Yet, amidst the hurt, a flicker of resolve stirred. Tomorrow, I would face this town, this pain, and seek answers. Even if they lay beyond my family's guarded walls. The question lingered, heavy and unanswered. What truth hid behind their silence? The night of my father's birthday celebration descended like a velvet curtain, heavy with the weight of my exclusion. In my rented room, the world outside pulsed with the distant cheer of a town united in festivity. While I sat, tethered to my phone, scrolling through a digital gallery of a party I was not permitted to attend. Each post was a shard of glass. Linda's radiant smile as she raised a glass. Emily's poised elegance in a dress that caught the light. My father's faint nod as he stood beside them. A figure both central and peripheral. The banquet hall, adorned with string lights and floral centerpieces, glowed through the screen, its warmth mocking the chill that settled in my chest. How could they gather so joyously, knowing I was here? Unseen, unwanted, I leaned against the window, the glass cool against my forehead, and watched the town's main street flicker with life. A couple strolled past, their laughter drifting upward, while the neon sign of the diner pulsed like a heartbeat. The social media posts continued to flood in, each one a testament to Linda's meticulous orchestration. A night to remember. One caption read, accompanied by a photo of local business owners, clinking glasses, their faces familiar from childhood summers. My breath caught as I recognized neighbors, even distant cousins. Among the guests, strangers had been welcomed where I was barred. The realization carved a hollow space within me, a void where familial belonging should have resided. Was my absence so inconsequential that it warranted no pause in their revelry? My thoughts drifted to a moment from my youth, distinct from earlier memories. When I was perhaps 16, standing in our backyard during a family gathering, Linda had orchestrated a flawless event, her voice bright as she introduced Emily to guests as our shining star. I had lingered by the dessert table, my hands clasped tightly, hoping for a glance of acknowledgement. Instead, Linda's eyes had skimmed over me, her smile tightening as she whispered to a guest about my independent streak. The word had stung, not for its truth, but for the disdain it carried. Now, as I watched the digital celebration unfold, that same disdain seemed to permeate my exclusion. A deliberate act to preserve the family's polished facade. I set the phone down, its glow dimming, and paced the small room. The bakery below had long since closed, its sweetness replaced by the stale air of my solitude. Why did I cling to the hope that they might reconsider? That a late invitation might arrive? The truth was as stark as the bare walls around me. Linda's vision of family had no place for me. Emily's silence, her willingness to bask in the spotlight while I languished in shadow, underscored her complicity. And my father, his quiet presence in those photos, his eyes averted, seemed complicit too. His passivity, a betrayal, I could not reconcile. Yet, even as these thoughts pressed against me, too, a deeper question emerged. Was I defined by their rejection? Or could I forge a path beyond it? The night stretched on, each hour marked by the town's gradual quieting, the party's echoes fading into memory. I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers tracing the worn quilt, and considered my next step. To remain here, wallowing in this hurt, would be to surrender to their narrative. Instead, I resolved to seek solace elsewhere, to reclaim a fragment of this town that still felt mine. The cafe on Elm Street, a haven from my childhood where my father once shared stories over hot chocolate, beckoned as a refuge. Tomorrow, I will go there, not to escape but to gather my strength, to face the truth of my family's choices in the light of day. The decision, though small, I felt like a tether to my agency. A quiet defiance against the silence that sought to define me. As I lay down, the ceiling above seemed less oppressive. The darkness less absolute. The pain of exclusion lingered. A bruise that would not fade quickly. But within it stirred a resolve to seek answers. To understand the contours of this rift. The cafe awaited. A place of memories and perhaps revelations. And I would meet it with eyes open, ready to confront whatever truths it might unveil. The morning after the celebration that had excluded me, I stepped into the cafe on Elm Street. Drawn by the promise of solace in its familiar embrace, the air was thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the soft strumming of a jukebox wove through the clatter of porcelain cups, a melody that stirred memories of simpler days. I settled at a corner table, the worn wood beneath my fingers grounding me as I sought to quiet the tumult within. My resolve from the previous night to face the truth of my family's rejection felt fragile in the daylight. Yet the cafe's warmth offered a fleeting refuge. As I sipped my coffee, my gaze wandered, only to freeze upon a figure at the counter, Mr. Thompson, my father's business partner, his eyes widening with a shock that mirrored my own. His reaction, a fleeting paralysis, as if I were a ghost, sent a shiver down my spine. I had not seen him in years, yet his presence here, in this haven of my childhood, felt like a thread of fate. Gathering my courage, I approached, my voice steady, despite the uncertainty coiling within. Mr. Thompson, it's been a long time, I said, offering a tentative smile. He blinked, recovering, and gestured for me to join him. Mia, I didn't expect to see you, he replied, his tone laced with something unspoken. A hesitation that piqued my curiosity. We settled into a booth. The cafe's hum fading as our conversation began. A delicate dance around the chasm of my family's silence. As we spoke of trivial matters, the town's new library, the cafe's unchanged menu, his guarded demeanor softened. Yet his eyes betrayed a weight I could not ignore. Emboldened, I ventured into the heart of my exclusion, asking if he had attended my father's birthday. His nod was slow, his expression tightening. It was a fine event, he said, but his pause invited me to press further. I wasn't there, I admitted, my voice low. And I'm trying to understand why. The words hung between us. And Mr. Thompson's gaze dropped to his coffee, his fingers tightening around the mug. After a moment, he spoke, his voice measured yet heavy with revelation. Your father's business is in trouble. Mia. Deep trouble. Linda's been keeping it quiet, controlling the narrative to protect appearances. The disclosure struck like a muted chord, resonating with the pain of my ostracism. It continued, his words careful, suggesting that my exclusion was no accident but a calculated move to avoid questions about the family's faltering facade. Linda's influence, he implied, extended beyond the celebration, shaping who was deemed worthy of inclusion. The cafe's warmth seemed to recede, replaced by a clarity that both wounded and empowered me. My family's rejection was not merely personal, but part of a larger deception, a tapestry of secrets I had been barred from seeing. Mr. Thompson's eyes met mine, soft with empathy. You've got potential, Mia, he said, sliding his business card across the table. If you ever need a start, call me. I left the cafe with his card in my pocket, the weight of his words reshaping my understanding. The town's streets, lined with American flags and storefronts, felt less confining as I walked, my mind alight with questions. My exclusion was not my failure but a symptom of a fractured family, one I could choose to step beyond. The resolve that had flickered the night before now burned brighter, urging me toward a confrontation, not for vengeance, but for truth. I would face my family, not as the outcast they had deemed me, but as someone claiming her narrative. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the town as I approached my family's home, a colonial house with pristine shutters that belied the discord within. Mr. Thompson's revelations had ignited a fire in me, not of anger, but of determination to uncover the truth behind my exclusion. The cafe's clarity lingered, a lens through which I saw my family's actions anew. I was no longer the girl who shrank from Linda's disapproval. I was a woman seeking answers, ready to stand in the light of my worth. The front door loomed, its polished surface, a barrier I would cross, not as a supplicant, but as one demanding reckoning. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of lavender, Linda's signature touch. She stood in the living room, arranging a vase with practiced precision, while Emily lounged on a sofa, her phone glowing with the remnants of the celebration's praise. My father sat in an armchair, his eyes fixed on a newspaper, a silent sentinel in his own home. Their tableau, so carefully composed, faltered as I entered, my presence an unexpected disruption. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the room's fragile calm. Linda's smile tightened, a mask slipping, while Emily's gaze darted to her mother, seeking guidance. I began with the celebration, my words deliberate, each one a step toward truth. "I wasn't invited to Dad's birthday," I said, my eyes moving from Linda to my father. "I want to know why." Linda's response was swift, her tone clipped. "It was a small gathering, Mia. We couldn't include everyone." Her excuse, as flimsy as the one delivered over the phone, crumbled under the weight of my next words. "I know about the business, about the trouble you've hidden," I said, watching her expression harden. Was my exclusion part of keeping that secret? The room stilled, the air taut with the truth I had unveiled. Linda's eyes narrowed, her voice rising in defense. "You've always been difficult, Mia, stirring trouble where there's none. This is about family unity, something you've never understood." Her words, sharp as thorns, sought to diminish me, to rewrite my pain as my fault. Emily remained silent, her fingers tightening around her phone, her allegiance clear. My father's gaze lifted, a flicker of conflict in his eyes. But he said nothing, his silence a heavier blow than Linda's accusations. I felt the old urge to retreat, to accept their narrative. But the cafe's revelations anchored me. I was not the problem, their deception was. Drawing a breath, I spoke again, my voice unwavering. "I deserve to be there, to celebrate with Dad, to be part of this family. Your choice to exclude me wasn't about space, it was about control." I turned to my father, seeking a spark of the man who once shared stories over hot chocolate. "Did you know I wasn't invited?" His lips parted, but no words came. His silence was a final fracture in my hope. Linda stepped forward, her voice cold. "You're making a scene, Mia. This is why you don't fit." Her words, meant to wound, instead clarified my path. I looked at them, Linda's defiance, Emily's avoidance, on my father's retreat, and saw a family bound by pretense, unwilling to change. "I'm done trying to fit into your version of family," I said, my voice resonant with conviction. "I'll build my own life, one where I'm valued for who I am." The words, born of pain and clarity, freed me from the weight of their expectations. I turned to leave, the room's stillness broken only by the soft creak of the floor beneath my steps. As I crossed the threshold, the afternoon light bathed me in warmth, a contrast to the coldness I left behind. Stepping onto the porch, I felt a mingling of sorrow and liberation. The confrontation had not healed the rift, but it had unshackled me from the need for their approval. The town stretched before me, its familiar contours, now a canvas for my own story. Mr. Thompson's card, still in my pocket, was a promise of possibility. A step toward a future I would define. I walked away, my heart bruised but unbroken, ready to forge a path where my worth was no longer a question. The confrontation with my family left me both unmoored and resolute, as if I had shed a heavy cloak I had not realized I wore. As I walked through the town's quiet streets, the late afternoon sun gilded the storefronts, casting a warmth that seemed to affirm my newfound clarity. The colonial house, with its pristine facade, receded into memory, its hold on me loosened by the truth I had spoken. I passed the hardware store, its window cluttered with tools and handwritten signs, and the library, where children's drawings adorned the bulletin board. These familiar sights, once tinged with the ache of exclusion, now felt like a backdrop to a story I was beginning to write for myself. My heart, though bruised, pulsed with a quiet strength, urging me to chart the path ahead. I found myself at the edge of the town park, where oak trees stood sentinel, their leaves whispering in the breeze. Settling on a bench, I let the events of the day unfold in my mind, each moment a thread in the tapestry of my liberation. The confrontation had not yielded the reconciliation I once sought, but it had granted me something more enduring: the certainty of my worth. Linda's accusations, Emily's silence, and my father's reticence had revealed a family bound by pretense, a dynamic I no longer needed to navigate. The pain of their rejection lingered, a shadow that would fade with time, but it no longer defined me. I traced the edge of Mr. Thompson's business card, still tucked in my pocket, its presence a tangible promise of possibility. The card, with its embossed logo and crisp edges, symbolized more than a professional opportunity. It was a bridge to a future unshackled from my family's expectations. I recalled Mr. Thompson's earnest words in the cafe, his belief in my potential a balm to the wounds inflicted by those I loved. With the park's tranquility enveloping me, I dialed his number, my fingers steady, despite the flutter of anticipation. His voice answered, warm and surprised, as if he had been expecting my call. Mia, I'm glad you reached out, he said, his tone carrying the same empathy I had sensed in the cafe. I explained my desire to explore the opportunity he had mentioned, to find a role where my skills could flourish. Our conversation, though brief, was a beacon of hope. Mr. Thompson outlined a position at a partner firm, a role involving project coordination that aligned with my education and ambition. It's a chance to start fresh, he said, his words resonating with my resolve. He promised to arrange an interview, his confidence in me, a stark contrast to the dismissal I had faced at home. As we spoke, the park's colors seemed to deepen: the grass, a richer green, the sky, a bolder blue, as if the world itself was aligning with my decision to move forward. I thanked him, my voice steady with gratitude, and ended the call with a sense of purpose that felt both new and inevitable. Returning to my rented room, I stood at the window, gazing at the town's silhouette against the fading light. The bakery below was silent, its warmth a distant memory. Yet I felt a warmth within, kindled by the steps I had taken. The confrontation had severed the ties that bound me to a false ideal of family, and Mr. Thompson's offer had opened a door to a future I could shape. I envisioned myself in a new city, perhaps, or even here, building a life where my voice mattered. The path was uncertain, its contours yet to be defined, but it was mine to walk, a journey fueled by the strength I had discovered within. The dawn of my departure broke with a quiet radiance, the town bathed in a light that felt like a benediction. I stood at the bus stop, my suitcase at my feet, the same one that had carried me back to this place days ago. Now, it held not just my belongings, but the weight of a decision to embrace my destiny. The streets, lined with American flags fluttering in the breeze, seemed to bid me farewell. Their familiarity no longer a tether, but a memory I could carry lightly. My heart, once heavy with the sting of rejection, now thrummed with a quiet optimism, a melody of possibility that I alone would compose. As I waited, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, not just the miles traveled, but the inner distance I had crossed, the confrontation, the revelations, the choice to step away from a family that could not see me. These were not endings, but beginnings. Mr. Thompson's offer, now a concrete plan with an interview scheduled, was a cornerstone of the life I would build. One where my worth was not a question but a given. The town, with its diners and oak-lined parks, would always be a part of me. But it no longer held the answers I sought. The bus approached. Its rumble, a gentle summons to the future. I boarded, my steps light, and took a seat by the window, watching the town recede into the distance. My family's absence, once a wound, was now a space where I could grow, unencumbered by their expectations. I am enough, I thought. The words, a vow to myself, a promise to define my path. As the horizon unfolded, vast and uncharted, I felt a surge of hope, ready to meet whatever lay ahead, with a heart open to possibility. Mia, the protagonist of My Family Banned Me from Dad's Birthday, then his business partner saw me and froze, learns a profound lesson about self-worth and the power of defining her own identity beyond familial expectations. Initially, she returns to her small American town seeking reconciliation, only to face exclusion from her father's milestone celebration, orchestrated by her controlling mother, Linda. This rejection, compounded by her sister Emily's silence and her father's passivity, forces Mia to confront a painful truth. Her family's love is conditional, tethered to a facade she cannot fit. Through her encounter with Mr. Thompson, who reveals the family's hidden financial struggles, Mia realizes her ostracism is not a reflection of her inadequacy, but a symptom of their dysfunction. The climactic confrontation, where she asserts her pain and refuses to accept their excuses, marks a turning point. Mia learns that true belonging comes from within, not from seeking validation from those who diminish her. By choosing to pursue a professional opportunity with Mr. Thompson and stepping away from her family's toxic dynamics, she embraces her agency, understanding that her worth is not contingent on their approval. This lesson empowers Mia to forge a future where she is the author of her narrative, a realization that transforms her pain into resilience and her isolation into liberation, affirming that self-acceptance is the cornerstone of a life authentically lived. The valet's eyes flicked over my 10-year-old Corolla with the indifference of someone accustomed to polished Lexuses. His hands already poised for keys that promised a better tip. I stepped out, the Connecticut evening sharp against my skin, and handed him the keys without a word. Inside the glass doors of Era, the world shimmered gold chandeliers casting fractured light, ivory linens draped like whispers, wine glasses so delicate they seemed to tremble under the weight of breath. My mother had chosen this place, of course, insisting that my parents' 45th anniversary demanded a stage worthy of the Whitmore legacy. I am Scarlett Whitmore, 32, the second daughter, the unmentioned daughter, invited not out of desire but obligation. As I crossed the threshold at 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes shy of the reservation, I wondered if anyone would notice my arrival or if, as always, I would dissolve into the gleam of their indifference. The maitre d' stood at his podium, his gaze skimming my plain black dress, lingering a moment too long on the scuffed heel of my boot before softening into a practiced smile. "Whitmore party?" he asked, his tone polite but edged with doubt. "Yes," I replied, my voice flat. betraying none of the unease curling in my chest. "Your sister said you might be joining us," he said, the words landing like a subtle dismissal, as if my presence were a footnote in someone else's story. He gestured toward a private corner of the restaurant, where a long banquet table gleamed under the chandelier's glow. My sister, Sloane, was already there, radiant in a crimson dress that caught the light like a flame. Her laughter sparkled, louder than the clink of crystal glassware, drawing every eye but mine. She didn't look up as I approached, her attention fixed on the relatives and family friends who orbited her like planets around a star. I took my seat at the table's far end, half hidden behind a decorative fern, my presence as inconsequential as the plant's shadow. The air hummed with conversation stories of Sloane's latest marketing triumph, my mother's recounting of the anniversary's planning, my father's low chuckle at some cousin's joke. I sat silently, my fingers tracing the edge of my napkin, its crisp fold a stark contrast to the worn edges of my life. The envelope in my purse pressed against my thigh, its thick cream-colored paper, a silent testament to years of saving, of hoping, of believing I could carve a place in this family. 7 years. $65,000 each, dollar a whisper of my worth. Tucked away, not because I owed them, but because I still dreamed they might see me. The clock ticked past 7, and the servers moved with choreographed grace, delivering champagne flutes that sparkled in the candlelight. Sloane rose, her glass raised, her smile a perfect crescent. The room hushed, expectant, as if her words were a gift to be unwrapped. To Eleanor and Paul Whitmore, Sloane began, her voice clear and charismatic. "Thank you for raising the most extraordinary, only child a family could ask for." The words sliced through the air, precise and unflinching, and landed in my chest like a blade. Only child. The phrase echoed, erasing me with a single breath. No one flinched. Not my mother, whose eyes glistened with pride. Not my father, who lifted his glass as if Sloane's words were gospel. Not the aunts, uncles, or cousins, who nodded and sipped, their smiles undisturbed by the lie. The champagne flutes clinked, a chorus of agreement, and the laughter swelled again, a tide that carried Sloane's triumph forward. I sat frozen, my hands clasped in my lap, the fern's leaves brushing my shoulder as if to offer condolence. No one turned my way, no one corrected her. I was not surprised, but the absence of surprise did not dull the ache. A cousin's boyfriend, seated nearby, leaned toward me, his brow furrowed. "Are you part of the Whitmore family, too?" he asked, his voice low, unaware of the weight his question carried. Before I could answer, a server appeared, refilling his glass, and the moment slipped away. As fleeting as my presence, I scanned the table, searching for a single pair of eyes that might meet mine, but found only the flicker of candlelight and the sheen of Sloane's dress. The envelope's weight grew heavier, a silent question I had yet to answer. I had not come to be noticed. Not tonight. I had come to end the silence that had defined me for 32 years. As Sloane's laughter rang out again, I knew the moment was coming, not with fanfare, but with the quiet resolve of someone who had waited long enough. As the echo of Sloane's toast lingered in the gilded air of Ara, my mind drifted, unbidden, to the years that had carved me into the shadow I had become. The restaurant's gleam faded, replaced by the soft blur of memory, our Connecticut home, its wide windows framing a childhood where I learned to exist on the edges. Sloane's words, proclaiming herself the sole heir to our parents' pride, were not a revelation but a confirmation of a truth I had carried since I was old enough to notice the tilt of their gazes. My childhood was not marked by cruelty, but by absence, a quiet erasure that began in the smallest moments and grew into a chasm I could not bridge. sitting at the banquet table, my fingers still clutching the napkin's crisp edge. I let the memories surface, each one a stone in the foundation of my silence. Our house on Cedar Lane was a stage for Sloane's brilliance. At 7, I watched her twirl across the living room in a ballet recital costume, the sequins catching the afternoon light like tiny stars. Our mother clapped, her face alight with a joy I rarely saw turned my way. Sloane's pirouettes were flawless, her presence magnetic, drawing neighbors and relatives to our doorstep for her performances. I sat on the staircase, my knees drawn up, sketching floor plans for imaginary houses in a notebook, my pencil scratching softly against the paper. Once, I showed my mother a drawing a library with skylights and cedar shelves. She glanced at it, her eyes already drifting to Sloane practicing in the yard. "That's nice, dear," she said, her voice a fleeting breeze, and returned to filming Sloane's leaps. I folded the sketch away, learning early that my creations were not the kind that drew applause. School offered no reprieve. In 4th grade, I entered a science fair, spending weeks building a model of a solar-powered greenhouse, its tiny panels wired with care. The night before, I practiced my presentation in my room, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Sloane had a poetry reading the same evening, her verses memorized with theatrical flair. Our parents drove her to the auditorium, promising to meet me at the fair afterward. I stood by my project, the gymnasium, buzzing with other families, my poster curling at the edges. The judges awarded me 2nd place, to a blue ribbon pinned to my cardigan. But when I looked for my parents, the bleachers were empty. They arrived an hour late, flushed from Sloane's standing ovation. And my father ruffled my hair absently. "Good job, kid," he said, his eyes on his phone, already planning Sloane's next event. The ribbon hung on my bedroom wall, a quiet trophy no one else noticed. By middle school, I found solace in solitude. While Sloane campaigned for student council president, her posters plastered across the hallways. I spent lunch hours in the art room, molding clay into miniature furniture for dollhouses I built from cardboard scraps. My art teacher, Miss Carver, I saw my work and suggested I submit a piece to a regional youth exhibit. I crafted a tiny replica of our living room, complete with a staircase where a small figure sat, sketching. The piece won a spot in the show, and I left a flyer on the kitchen table. My handwriting neat regional art exhibit. May 12, 6 p.m. My parents were at Sloane's debate tournament that night, and the flyer vanished, likely swept into the trash with junk mail. I rode my bike to the exhibit, the spring air cool against my face, and stood alone as strangers admired my work. When I returned home, the house was dark, and my parents were still celebrating Sloane's victory. High school sharpened the divide. I enrolled in an advanced art course, spending evenings drafting blueprints for community spaces, a park pavilion, at the bookstore. My portfolio earned me a scholarship to a summer design intensive, a program that promised mentorship from local architects. I typed a letter announcing my acceptance, printed it on crisp white paper, and placed it on the dining table, flanked by candles to catch their eye. For 3 days, it sat untouched, gathering faint rings from coffee mugs. One evening, I found it gone, replaced by Sloane's debate trophies, their brass gleaming under the chandelier. I asked my mother if she'd seen the letter. She blinked, her brow furrowing. "Oh, you're doing something with art, aren't you?" she said, then turned to discuss Sloane's latest speech. The scholarship became my secret, a spark I nurtured alone. Aunt Lydia and Uncle Frank were my anchors in those years. They lived 10 miles away, in a modest house filled with the scent of cedar and fresh bread. When I was 15, they attended my first solo art show at the community center, a collection of sketches for sustainable homes. Lydia brought a bouquet of daisies, their petals bright against her navy coat. And Frank clapped me on the shoulder, his voice warm. "You've got a gift. Scarlet," he said, his eyes meeting mine with a steadiness my parents never offered. They stayed for the entire event, asking about my designs and their questions, a balm to the silence at home. Afterward, we ate ice cream at a diner, the neon sign buzzing softly. And for those hours, I felt like I mattered. As the memories receded, I sat at Ara's table, the fern's leaves brushing my arm. The clink of glasses, a distant hum. Sloane's Toast had not invented my invisibility, it had merely named it. My childhood was a tapestry of moments where I learned to fade, to tuck my dreams into corners where they wouldn't disturb the family's focus on Sloane. Yet Lydia and Frank had seen me. Their presence, a thread of light woven through the years. The envelope in my purse, heavy with $65,000. It was not just money, it was the weight of every sketch, every ribbon, every hope I had carried alone. As the servers cleared, the appetizers, I felt the stirrings of something new. A resolve to step out of the shadows I had known too well. The weight of Sloane's Toast at Era lingered. A sharp echo of the childhood I had just revisited, pulling me forward into the years that followed. The restaurant's candlelight flickered as I sat, still cloaked by the fern's shadow, my thoughts turning to the decade after high school, a time when I built a life not for applause, but for survival. My work as an interior designer became my refuge. Each project a canvas where I could shape spaces that spoke of warmth and belonging, qualities absent from my family's orbit. Yet, even as I carved this path, I carried a quiet hope, tucked away like a seed in barren soil, that my efforts might one day earn me a place at their table. The envelope in my purse, heavy with $65,000, was the fruit of that hope, grown through years of toil and sacrifice. A testament to my refusal to vanish entirely. After graduating from the design intensive, I moved into a small apartment in New Haven, its walls bare but brimming with possibility. I took every freelance job I could find, redesigning a coffee shop's patio, drafting layouts for a local bookstore, even staging model homes on weekends. My days blurred into evenings spent hunched over blueprints, my fingers smudged with graphite. The hum of my laptop a constant companion. Each paycheck was a victory. Not for its size, but for its purpose. I deposited most into a savings account, watching the balance grow like a fragile vine. The money was not for luxury or escape, it was for proof that I could contribute to the Whitmore legacy, that I was more than the afterthought Sloane's Toast had declared me to be. By my mid-20s, I had saved $30,000, a sum that felt like a shout in a house of whispers. Family gatherings remained a gauntlet. At a Thanksgiving dinner in our parents' dining room, the chandelier's glow bathed Sloane's latest award, a plaque for a viral ad campaign in golden light. She recounted the project with practiced charm, her voice weaving a spell over the table. I sat across from her, my plate barely touched, and mentioned a boutique hotel I had designed in Hartford. Its lobby now featured in a regional magazine. My mother's eyes flicked toward me, then away, as if my words were a fleeting distraction. "Sloane, tell us about the client meeting in New York," she said, her fork poised over her plate. My father nodded, engrossed, and my story sank, unnoticed, into the clatter of silverware. I stopped sharing after that. My achievements folded into silence. My savings account, the only place where my worth seemed to register. The work grew harder as the years passed. A client's last-minute changes meant sleepless nights reworking a restaurant's layout. A contractor's error forced me to redo a gallery's lighting plan on my dime. Yet I persisted, taking side jobs consulting for a startup, teaching a weekend workshop on sustainable design to keep the savings climbing. By last year, The account held $65,000. Each dollar, a stitch in the fabric of my resolve. I chose a cream-colored envelope for the sum, its texture smooth under my fingers. A vessel for the years I had spent believing I could buy my family's regard. I imagined presenting it to them, not with fanfare, but with quiet dignity. A gesture to say, I am here, and I am enough. But as I sat at Aura, the fern's leaves grazing my sleeve, Sloane's words, only child, revealed the futility of that dream. The envelope was no longer a gift for them. It was a question I had yet to answer. My isolation deepened outside the family. Friends drifted, their lives tangled in marriages and careers, while I poured myself into work. Yet I found solace in small rituals, brewing chamomile tea in my apartment, sketching ideas for community centers that might never be built. These moments kept me tethered, reminding me that I was building something, even if no one else saw it. The envelope, now a silent companion, sat in my desk drawer, its weight both burden and beacon. As the servers at Aura moved to clear the plates, I felt the stirrings of a shift, a realization that my savings were not for those who ignored me, but for those who had always seen me. The question was no longer whether I could earn my family's love, but whether I could let it go. The clatter of plates at Aura faded as the truth settled in. Cold and unyielding, my family would never choose to see me. Sloane's toast, still ringing in my ears. I had stripped away the last vestige of hope I had clung to, leaving only the clarity of my worth. My fingers brushed the envelope in my purse, its cream-colored edges, a silent vow I had yet to voice. The banquet table stretched before me, a sea of faces bathed in candlelight. None turned my way. A distant cousin's partner, his tie slightly askew, leaned close and murmured, So, you're a Whitmore too? Right. His question, innocent yet piercing, hung, unanswered, as a server swept past, refilling glasses with a flourish. I rose, my movements deliberate, the fern's shadow falling away, like a discarded veil. I had not come to plead for their attention. I had come to claim my own. I walked the length of the room, my steps measured, the click of my boots soft against the polished floor. Conversations ebbed, then stilled, as if the air itself held its breath. Aunt Lydia and Uncle Frank sat slightly apart, their quiet presence, a beacon in the room's performative glow. Lydia's eyes met mine, widening with a question she did not voice. Frank set down his fork, a piece of sea bass untouched. I placed the envelope before them, its weight, a quiet thunder. This is for you, I said, my voice steady, just loud enough to carry. For everything you've done. The room fell silent, a sudden void where laughter had reigned. Sloane's smile froze, her glass half raised. My mother's fork clinked against porcelain, a sharp note in the hush. Every eye turned to me, their gazes heavy with surprise, confusion, perhaps judgment. I did not falter. Lydia's hand trembled as she touched the envelope, her fingers hesitant, scarlet. What is this? She asked, her voice a whisper of disbelief. Open it later, I said, my tone firm yet warm. You saw me when no one else did. That's enough. Frank's hand covered mine, his calloused palm grounding, his eyes bright with unspoken pride. You didn't need to do this, he said softly, but I shook my head. They had earned it, not with wealth or acclaim, but with the simple act of seeing. I turned, my gaze sweeping past Sloane's stunned expression, my mother's rigid posture, my father's blank stare. I did not explain. No, apology. The maître appeared, my coat in hand, as if summoned by the moment's gravity. Slipping it on, I caught my reflection in the restaurant's gilded mirror taller, unbowed. A woman no longer waiting. I stepped into the Connecticut night, the air crisp and absolute, carrying the scent of frost and pine. The silence that followed was not the kind that had haunted me. It was clean, a canvas for the life I would build. Behind me, the restaurant's glow dimmed, its voices swallowed by the dark. The envelope, now in Lydia and Frank's hands, it was no longer a plea for belonging but a declaration of my own. I walked to my Corolla, the valet's nod, a fleeting acknowledgement, and drove into the night. And the road stretching before me like a promise. I was finally ready to keep. Lydia and Uncle Frank had shifted something irrevocable within me, a refusal to remain unseen. By the time I reached my New Haven apartment, my phone pulsed with notifications. Its screen, a constellation of missed calls 19. Their timestamps, a frantic descent from 10:52 p.m. to 7:14 p.m. Voicemails crowded my inbox, each a predictable script of indignation. I set the phone face down on my kitchen counter, the wood cool beneath my palms, and boiled water for lavender tea, its steam curling like a promise of calm. The world could wait. I was done answering to its demands. The first voicemail, from my father, was a blade wrapped in decorum. "Scarlett, your behavior tonight was unacceptable," he said. His voice clipped, each syllable a judgment. "You've disgraced us." No greeting, no inquiry. Just 4 sentences that assumed my guilt. My mother's message followed, a trembling cascade of words spanning 3 minutes. "How could you humiliate us like that?" In front of everyone, she asked, her tone weaving guilt with accusation. As if my existence were the offense, I deleted the rest unplayed. Their voices reduced to static in my mind. At 11:03 p.m., a text from Sloane arrived, a screenshot of a message I had sent her years ago. After a client's rejection had left me raw, I feel like I'm screaming into a void. Her caption read, "This explains a lot. We're worried about your stability." The words were a calculated barb, but they found no purchase. I blocked her number. Then my parents, me fingers steady. The act as final as closing a book. Morning brought a call from Lydia, her voice soft as dawn light. "Scarlett, we haven't opened the envelope," she said, a tremor of awe in her tone. "Are you certain?" I leaned against my window, the glass cool against my forehead, and pictured their kitchen, warm with the scent of coffee. "Yes," I said. "You and Frank gave me what they never could. It's yours." A pause. Then Frank's voice, low and stunned, broke through. $65,000. "Scarlett, this is," he trailed off. And Lydia's soft laugh, half sob, filled the silence. They proposed a scholarship for young designers. A fund to lift voices like mine had been, "Only if it bears your name," Frank added. I smiled. "The first true one in hours. I'd like that," I said. And the call ended with a warmth that steadied me. That afternoon, he sat at me desk. The apartment quiet, save for the hum of a distant radiator. I opened my laptop and typed a letter. Each word deliberate. A severance woven with grace. "Dear Mother and Father, I release you from the pretense of loving a daughter you never truly knew. I release myself from the weight of seeking your approval. Do not contact me again. I wish you peace." I clicked send. The screen's glow, a quiet witness to my resolve. I then gathered the relics of their presents, framed photos from forced holiday gatherings, their smiles stiff as cardboard, and wrapped them in tissue, storing them in a closet box. My walls, now bare, awaited a new story. Weeks later, a silver SUV pulled into my driveway, its polished surface glinting under the January sun. My parents stood on my porch, my mother in a tailored coat, pearls gleaming, my father clutching a leather folder like a talisman. I opened the door, my voice even, You have 15 minutes. Inside, they seemed out of place against my hand-woven rug and shelves of sketchbooks. My mother perched on the couch, her eyes scanning for flaws, while my father spread documents on the coffee table, old report cards, a faded drawing from grade school. We want to mend this. Scarlett, my mother said, her voice quivering with rehearsed sincerity. Family matters. I poured tea, the coffee steaming, and returned with a tray. When did you last ask about my work? I asked, setting the tray down. My father bristled. We've always supported you, he said, gesturing to the papers. I opened a worn journal, its pages marked with dates. They missed a gallery opening in 2018, a hospital stay in 2020. You were at Sloane's award ceremony, I said, pointing to one. You didn't answer when the hospital called. My mother's tears came, but they stirred no sympathy. We can try therapy, she offered. I shook my head. This isn't about fixing. It's about truth. I opened the door. The winter air sharp. I need space. Please go. They left, their footsteps fading, and I sipped my tea. Its warmth, a quiet truth. The silence that followed my parents' departure was not a void but a foundation, solid and unshaken. My New Haven apartment, once a refuge from rejection, became a haven of purpose. Its walls now adorned with sketches from my latest projects and photos of moments that mattered, Lydia and Frank laughing at a picnic. A students vibrant mural. The Scarlett Whitmore Design Scholarship launched in February. Its announcement, a modest column in the local paper, nestled between a book fair and a charity run. It offered grants to young artists, those whose dreams, like Minawanse, flickered in the shadows of doubt. Applications arrived. Each, a story of resilience, a girl sketching cityscapes on diner napkins, a boy crafting vibrant patterns despite his family's scorn. Their voices echoed my own, and in answering them, I found my calling. I met Elise, a soft-spoken student, at my studio, her portfolio brimming with raw, emotive designs. I'm not sure my ideas are good enough, she said, clutching her sketchbook. Ik knelt beside, the scent of paint sharp in the air. Your ideas don't need permission, I said. They need space to grow. We work together. Her hesitance, giving way to bold strokes. Her first project, a community center mural, unveiled to local applause. Watching her beam, I saw my journey reflected, a reminder that visibility begins within. My home became a gathering place, its warmth spilling into a spring open house. Friends and mentees filled the rooms, their laughter mingling with the clink of mismatched mugs and the aroma of cedar candles. Lydia pour cider. Frank shared stories, and Elise sketched in a corner, her confidence blooming. No one mentioned my parents or Sloane. The absence was not a wound but a freedom. My walls, layered with life, told a story of chosen family, each frame a testament to those who saw me. One evening, I visited Elise's studio. Her mural, a cascade of indigo and amber, curling like rivers across the wall. It says what I couldn't before, she said, her eyes bright. I nodded, understanding, watering rosemary on my windowsill. I thought of Ara's cold brilliance. Now, a distant memory. My legacy was here in Elise's courage, the scholarship's promise, and the quiet strength of those who chose me. I was no longer waiting. I was building. And that was enough.